Welcome to the pod studio. We are chomping at the bit to talk about the awesome food we've eaten lately. So first, the food on this episode of Due Diligence. Lindsay Shively here with Jill Silva and our guest, Chris Mach. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
We're so excited. Chris is here we were talking about how should we introduce you, Chris, because you guys do a multitude of delicious things, including Ibis Bakery and Messenger Coffee.
Yeah.
And there's even an association with Black Dog, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, that's where it all started.
Okay.
More on that soon. Jill, where have you been eating?
Lindsay, I went to Harp Barbecue.
Yay!
Remember when we talked about that on the Crane episode? Met Tyler Harp. Yeah, pretty extraordinary. So he had these great big cookers out under a tent in front of the Raytown Brewery. And he did brisket. He did pork belly. But here's the deal. I went up and I said, and I don't think anybody had done this before. I said, I want one of everything on your menu. You're not surprised by that, are you?
No, and I love it.
And the person who was taking my debit card said, as if this hadn't happened. I said, what? So we had tacos, we had the brisket, we had the pork belly, which was delicious. Let's see, we had the sides. So his coleslaw has Granny Smith apples in it.
Yum.
Very delicious. Let me look at my photo here. This is some of the most photogenic barbecue I've ever seen. So the tacos.
His Instagram's amazing.
Yeah, and the tacos come with pickled strawberries. So what is a better contrast with, meat colors?
Oh, right.
Yeah, really beautiful.
How did the pickled strawberries pick up with the brisket?
Man, it works really well because you've got that fattiness, of the meat, and then you've got that sort of zing and sweetness of the pickled strawberry. So it worked really well. Also, visually, it makes a stunning photograph.
Awesome. Was it busy?
Yes, and kind of no. I mean, it was sort of, ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But the brewery was pretty full. And after that, a lot of people started playing games. They have board games in the corner. So,
What a Saturday treat.
it was just fun to hang out for a couple of hours. And of course, I did get a back behind the scenes tour as well. So,
Nice.
yeah, I got to see all the tanks and talk about all the fun stuff they're working on.
If your mouth is watering, please go listen to our previous episode with Michael and all the fun people at Crane Brewing and talking about barbecue. I've recently decided my eating out is going to consist of takeout for a while because it's just a little more relaxing with the 6-month-old.
Yeah, it's a little tough to go out with the little ones. I remember that.
I mean, she's pretty good, but mom doesn't relax, right? Mom's watching her. Right?
You're always worried there's going to be some kind of food throwing or, rearing backward tantrum out, onto
Diaper
somebody.
changes.
Yeah, onto somebody's
stuff.
table nearby. Yeah, I get it.
Right? So I think this is going to be the first of several takeout Saturday situations, but we were talking about where to go, and I wanted to try someplace different. And I have realized I hadn't been to Chai Shai in forever. I years ago discovered it, loved it in Brookside, and then a friend brought it to me on maternity leave, and I was like, oh, where have you been? The spicy mangoes are unbelievable. They're not shy with the slices of mangoes, and the seasoning they put on it is amazing. And their staff is just really helpful too. When I called up and I really wanted lamb korma, they go, listen, the special tonight is aloo gosht, if I'm saying that right. And it's, if you like lamb korma, you're going to love this. And they were spot on. The samosas are some of the chewiest and well spiced I've had. I loved it. It's a 59th and Holmes.
They're well known for their samosas for sure.
Mom's recipe, I hear from the
Yeah.
family, right? Yes.
Absolutely. So, Chris,
Yeah.
get in on this. Where have you been lately?
My wife and I live in Strawberry Hill, and there's a couple of spots that we love. Slaps Barbecue is really nice.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Nice understatement.
There's a restaurant. It's El Salvadorian food, and it's called Las Palmas, I believe.
I've heard good things about this.
The pupusas are great, really nice as well. And yeah, there's a lot of like San Antonio Market is over there. They make all their own tortillas in house, and their tacos are really fantastic.
I love that place.
Yeah, there's a lot of good spots in Kansas City, Kansas.
Oh, that's San Antonio is one of the ones when I ask where to go for tacos, that one always comes up.
Yeah, and then across the street there's El Pollo Rey, and then down the street there's Jarocho. So a really good nexus there of
Delicious.
Mexican food.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Chris. We always want to ask the guests where they go because that sends us off on our own
Yeah.
eating adventures. So let's talk about, speaking of delicious, Ibis Bakery. The pastries I've had at your shop are unbelievable.
Thank you.
How did you get started in all this?
Yeah, so it actually started at Black Dog. Jill was one of our earliest customers, actually, and advocates. But my family purchased Black Dog almost 6 years ago now from the previous owner who was having some health issues. We used to meet there. I grew up playing soccer and doing action sports. So my brother and I had started a skateboard shop that was right down the street, and we used to have our meetings at Black Dog. So I've been a customer
love
there
it.
for 10 years. And yeah, when we found out that it was up for sale, my mom was transitioning, and she ended up wanting to kind of take it over. Independently of all of that, I had been talking to my brother-in-law, and my brother, and my wife, and some others about starting a coffee roasting company / bakery, and we ended up actually starting both of them right next door. So we had a little tiny roaster in a old karate gym where we had all of our green coffee stored there, and we were baking in actually the back of Black Dog's kitchen at that time in I don't even know what they would be called, like cast iron skillets with lids.
Nice.
Because it makes a nice crust for the bread. So, yeah. And then it just sort of, actually, when Jill wrote the article on toast, it just kind of took off. That actually.
So Black Dog is in my neighborhood. So we had been following it for years.
Lenexa, right?
With previous owners. And so my husband was spending a lot of time at Black Dog. It was kind of his home away from home, his office. And one day he came home and he said, "Oh my gosh, you're working on your food issue, the annual food issue that I did for the magazine when I was at the Star." And that usually had 35 different, new things in town. And he said, "You've got to do toast. I just had the most phenomenal toast. You've got to go over to Black Dog." So I go over there, and it's the thickest toast I've ever seen. And it's just beautiful rustic breads, and it's spread with, all kinds of different toppings. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this. So that's the first time I met Chris and his wife, Kate, and kind of took off from there. I mean, it's been a stunning and meteoric rise because I looked back, that was 2014. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
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 I mean, so that's not that long ago. And I remember asking you when you bought for Fair, I said, "What is going on here? How long have you been cooking bread and making bread, baking bread?" And Chris said, like, 4 years. And I'm like, this is stunning. It's really stunning how fast. But your learning curve has been exponential, and you've had a little help from Fred Spompanato on that.
Yes.
So walk us through kind of the, toast to soon I knew you were kicking out the wall into the dojo next door, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. It was originally just bread, and I was planning on just learning how to do it and passing it off to somebody else because I was really interested in coffee. And then I just fell in love with the process, so I just did it every day. Got in contact with Fred, who was the previous owner of Faveri, and he helped me learn, which gave me a big leg up in my learning curve. Like, I think I got, 30 years of wisdom, maybe 40 years of wisdom in a very concentrated time. I could still be working out of the karate dojo now if it wasn't for him. And Taylor Petrin, who owns 1900 Barker. We baked together quite a bit before he opened his spot and we opened our spot. And I remember going over to his house, and he had been in bread making and connected with Fred prior to me. But he had this, he was always experimenting with stuff. And his metric of success was whether or not it made bread.
Well, it's a good place to start, don't you think?
Right.
It's a great place to start. Yeah, and I think it's paid off. He's doing amazing. Yeah, so the bread world is super small, and it's a fun world to be in. Super collaborative. So I just really loved the community, and I loved the process. It's like very meditative. You can't rush it. You have to be patient. You have to let the dough be what it's going to be. And my wife loved to sell it. She like loved customer interactions, loved telling people what it was and how it was better for your body. And like, yeah, so she was serving toast while my mom was kind of managing the store and all. Yeah, I have fond memories of that. first
Cranberry
year.
walnut, still my favorite. Describe some of these toasts so people can, I mean, I described it as thick, but beyond that, give them a
Yeah.
little visual on what you started out with.
Yeah, so our breads are like old world French style breads. They're leavened naturally with a sourdough starter essentially, but it's kind of mild and it takes, 30 hours between start to finish to end a loaf of bread. And it comes out like really caramelized and sweet and like open interior. So we slice that up in probably like an inch-ish thick, toast it, and the holes absorb the butter. So we slather it with butter and salt, and we do like a country bread, which is just basic flour, water, salt, and jam, and a little bit of sea salt and butter. And then cranberry walnut was the one that we kind of became known for. It's just toasted walnuts, cranberries that are soaked a little bit. And we do that with butter, almond butter, honey, and sea salt. And yeah, those were kind of the two. The country bread with jam and the cranberry walnut. And the cranberry walnut was one I got from a friend who's baking on the West Coast. So I can't take credit for that recipe.
Yeah, but it's popular, so it really doesn't matter,
Yeah.
does it?
Right? What do you think it is about something that seems so simple but has such a process behind it, surely? But what is that? Why do people gravitate to it?
Yeah.
I felt like toast was reinvented when I met that piece of toast. I was like, we all put toast in the toaster and the bagel in the bagel. It was something that I felt like I hadn't seen before. Now, you went to San Francisco and kind of there was a toast thing going on that sort of inspired you, right?
Yeah, there was a place called The Mill in San Francisco that was doing it. And my brother-in-law, who was living out on the West Coast, who started the companies with me and some other people, he was the one who brought the idea to us. And that concept, I did some more research after the fact, was actually started by this lady who has a very small coffee house on a beach, Ocean Beach, I believe, in San Francisco. And she does coconuts, coffee, and toast. And she makes her bread. Like, it's a cool concept. I can't actually remember the name off the top of my head, but so the origins are not here, but yeah, the concept is just like people eat toast.
Right.
and
It's
butter.
nostalgic,
Yeah,
but better
it
than
is.
anything you ever made at home.
Right. It just
Yeah.
doesn't look like anything you've ever made at home.
Right.
Even the good stuff that you might put in your toaster. It didn't look the same. But I think even beyond that, it was just sort of something that I really hadn't seen before. And it was before avocado toast, I feel like.
Oh,
So, that craze kind of took off, and you guys really resisted not doing the avocado toast
did.
thing. Yeah. I don't know. I guess you should be congratulated, but
We've given it.
what was the
since.
thought there?
I think we just wanted to be relatively simple, like to harken back to what you had growing up or with breakfast just in general. So jam and butter and bread. And yeah, the nut butter was sort of a play off of peanut butter and jelly or ish. But my wife and I really like almond butter. So that's why that became a toast topping.
Yeah. And so now you've evolved to, and am I saying this correct, tartines?
Yeah. It's just
So that's kind of like, it's kind of toast and it's kind of a sandwich, sort of, but open-faced, right?
yeah, it's just a glorified toast, really.
Okay.
It's the
Okay, I
same.
just wanted
Loaded
to
toast,
clarify
right?
that.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like, but then, you see a new word and you go, what's that?
It was our way of not putting avocado toast on the menu.
Well, so and at your opening for the downtown location, which we need to talk about, you had those tartines, those open face
Yeah.
bread sand kinds of things, and there were lots of different toppings there that were not the same thing that you had going
Yeah.
on at Black Dog.
That was completely unintentional, actually. Our kitchen didn't get certified to open by our grand opening. So our cook at that time, Logan, he, like, over the course of a couple weeks, had to figure out a way to produce a menu without any burners, essentially.
Oh, wow.
So we had just a toaster and that's basically why.
Well, we're doing toast.
That's the heating element.
Right. That's basically what happened, and then it's sort of expanded from there. But he was able to execute a lot off of a very rudimentary space. So the tartines we didn't plan on having when we first opened. We actually were going to have a lot of other things that were just like bread centric. But because of that, and now they've stuck because people really like them, and it ties into our concept well. I guess that's sort of how we started. So,
Absolutely. So you had Black Dog, then you went to Ibis. You bought Freveri in between there, so you should give us a little history on that, and then you make this big leap to that really amazing Ibis Messenger. Tell us how that kind of happened.
So our current space, which is just Messenger Coffee, it's on the front. We've been planning that since we started. So we wanted to have like an open space concept where you could come in and see the processes functioning. And so everything else that's happened between when we started and the opening of that space, like a little over a year and a half ago, has been, just growth to get to the point where that makes sense for us to open a space like that. So Fred, about a year after I started baking with him, who is the owner of Freveri, he wanted to retire and said he was going to close down the space, or offer it to his 2 staff members, or he wanted someone that he thought would understood the concept. So he reached out to us, and the other 2 owners actually ended up partnering with us. So we did it in tandem with one another. So, and then their wives both got jobs over the course of a year out of state. So they moved away, and we kept it. And it's just such an asset to the city, and we didn't want it to close. And I just love what it is and love the space. And we've had some issues with the oven stuff over the course of time that we're still trying to resolve. But I feel like there's so much to what Freveri is, and we hope to keep it going. Yeah.
And Fred is pretty important to the whole rustic artisan bread. I mean, tell us just a tiny bit about his background.
Yeah, so he was baking for, I think it's called Monterey bread, where he was doing thousands of pounds of bread a day, and ended up, I think, managing that production and wanted to downsize for himself. So he actually started farm to market bread with another guy, Mark.
Mark Friend, right?
Out of the back of
Their car, right?
What is the cafe? I can't remember. Classic Cup.
Is it Classic Cup?
I think he ended up selling out of there, or at some point got connected with them. I think before then he was doing I don't know where he was baking out of. And then that got to the point where it became too large for him, so he downscaled again to start Freveri. So he is like bread to Kansas City.
And you're carrying on that sort of, that
artisanal
lineage.
Legacy.
Yeah, that lineage, which I think is really fascinating. But I can remember, you guys are too young for this. When I moved to Kansas City in '89, wow, there was not much of a bread scene at all. And that was just, I was looking around for better bread all the time. And soon after, I can't remember the exact year, I should have looked it up, but Farm to Market came along and really changed the scene. And I think I asked you about that when you bought Freveri. How did that feel? Because that was really, continuing that lineage, I think, was really important to Kansas City's unbreakable artisan bread scene. We would not be the city we are right now without both Mark and Fred.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely.
They paved the way for us to really be able to do what we do.
And now there's you and Taylor and Hearth Baking. And who else would you say is sort of doing that kind of bread in this area?
There was a guy who was doing his name is Chris Glenn. He had a new traditionalist bread, but I think he's done now. I don't know that there's anybody else. So it's still pretty small.
Yeah, so Lawrence, Weston, Kansas City, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's because I fell in love with Faveri on a cheese slipper Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
I could not believe I was eating at Novel, and I loved the bread so much and said, "Where'd this come from?" And he goes, "Next down the block, and you've got to go on a Saturday in the summer."
Yeah.
And I could not believe the line when I rolled up. I have not been this season. Are you guys continuing that, or did that?
Yeah. So we are not going to do this season at Faveri because we have some longer term plans for that space. So yeah, we're getting production all set up back there, and we're hoping actually to convert it back to wood fired. So we're taking some time to sort through all that. So we're doing it at Messenger off of 17th and Grand on Fridays through the summer.
Cheese slippers?
Yeah.
Cheese slipper Friday?
Yeah, Cheese Slipper Friday this year.
I'm really excited. How do you describe a cheese slipper? It's just delicious toppings in the middle, right? I mean, you can do a better job than me.
So ciabatta is an Italian word, and it actually means slipper. So cheese slipper is just ciabatta with cheese in it. And we do it with just whatever toppings are at the market that day and put out the menu right before, essentially. And we do 4 different options. We have beer, wine, desserts.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Mark your
It's
calendars
fun.
for Cheese Slipper Friday.
Well, and then beyond bread, I mean, I love the cheese slipper. Chris knows we buy a lot of those because he sees our name going through on the rotation sheet of the orders. But beyond that, pastry, when did that because, I mean, it would be enough to just bake bread in the city, right? But then you had to go and do pastry, which kind of started, a whole new thing for me.
Yeah, as the more I got into bread, the more I became interested in doing French style pastries, so croissants and brioche and tarts and stuff. And I took a class for a week out in San Francisco at the Baking Institute, San Francisco Baking Institute, and came back and just started to try to make them. And I really wanted to use our sourdough starter. So our sourdough starter is like a little yeast bacteria culture that's just flour and water, and it replaces yeast for our bread. So it's not dried yeast; it's like this live thing. We used to carry it around when we first opened to dinner with us. It was like a little child.
Does it have a name? Have you named it?
It's currently named Steven. It was originally Michael Bublé, and then we had a son, and then they die. So we got Faveri's. Fred lent us some before. But anyway, our starter.
A lot of starters are named, but that's not weird, is it?
No, it's not. You have to feed them. So they are like a little. Anyways, I wanted to use the starter in viennoiserie, which is like laminated doughs. And yeah, that's how it started. And then we got really, really talented pastries staff from coming out of the culinary school at Johnson County.
Oh.
And yeah, that's their program there is really, it's amazing for pastry. So I've just sort of let those people run with it, and what they do is incredible. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
They have a great certification program out there. Now,
Yes.
Did you go to school there?
First semester, yeah.
Okay.
I just did cooking.
You didn't do any baking?
No, yeah.
This just still blows my mind.
Right.
Like, I am not a good baker, and it's a lot of chemistry involved, right? But also a lot of, there's the art form and the wild
Patience.
fermentation and the patience.
Yeah.
And I always tell Chris, I said this first thing in the morning, I'm like, how's your day going? Because I know that baking starts at 3 in the morning, and I'm just never going to be that person.
Oh my gosh, I see you, Chris. Me and you have the same alarm clock.
Yeah, Lindsay's been up for hours before I appear on the scene.
Yeah, that's what you got. You should start baking.
Baker's hours, right?
Yeah, there's something about the morning that's good. Yeah, I don't remember what you just. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, what
There was a question.
We all started dreaming about bread in early
bread?
morning.
Well, it was about how if you'd gone to Johnson County Community
Oh,
College
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and just
Yeah.
I mean, I'm stunned by how quickly your learning curve has been, and I know Fred had a piece in that, but still, only 5 years. Is it 5 years later?
Yeah.
You've got 3 major businesses going.
Wow.
And so talk to us a little bit about that ramping up to the new place, because this is a building.
Beautiful.
You've been there, Lindsay, right?
Yes, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many
it's a big-
stories, beautiful architecturally and otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said before, we had the dream of like the concept where you could come into a space and see coffee being roasted, see baking happening, see your drink being made. And my brother-in-law and brother, so my brother-in-law's name is Trevor, my brother's name is Matt. They both really paid attention to the aesthetic of the space. So Trevor's friend did a lot of the artwork for it. We had I was telling Jill earlier before we started talking on the microphones that we had an architect do the design that was specialized in like coffee and bakeries. And they are out on the West Coast, and they had one of their designers who's originally from Kansas City. So they usually don't do projects outside of San Francisco. And so it was really cool to have them have that experience, know the right aesthetic, and yeah. So it's bigger than I think any of us thought it would be. And I remember before we opened, a week before, we were all freaking out. It was like, no one's gonna come. Like, who's gonna come into the space? Like, we don't even know.
But people do.
Yeah, they did, which was really amazing. Like, Kansas City's been so receptive to it, and yeah. So the concept is just that you can come in and engage as much as you want or as little as you want. You can be anonymous because there's a lot of people there, or you can talk to the bakers who are shaping bread right in front of you, or talk to the person who's roasting coffee. And we really hoped and continue to hope that people get in touch with where their food comes from, because we really care. The reason why we started all of this actually is because we care about the supply chain, and making sure that our sourcing is ethical and our pricing is correct to reflect that, the quantity of people that touch coffee from the farm to when you actually drink it. And we're applying the same concept to our food out of our kitchen and also to our bread. So we've got a couple of farms that are growing, and pastries too. Wheat for us, it's just like heirloom varieties. We have a mill that we're milling all our own flour for and producing the bread out of that. And it's amazing, like the difference in flavor and texture. It's very difficult to work with sometimes because it's so sensitive to like humidity and temperature. And yeah, so we're hoping to establish or at least participate in the establishment of like a more sustainable supply chain for all of that. And we want customers to engage that as much as they want to.
Talk a little bit about the mill, because it's fascinating, but I've seen somebody pouring things into it a couple of times, but
Yeah.
how often are you milling?
We mill every day.
Every day?
day.
Yeah, so we mill fresh every day, and it's basically there's just a big hopper that stores the grain when you mill, and it gets fed into 2 big stones, one that's stationary on the bottom and one that is rotating on the top. And the rotation, actually, the stones are textured, they're coarse, and they actually crush the wheat. And then it gets blown out through a sifter, which takes some of the bran off. And then we can recombine it to make whole grain flour. or we can keep it sifted off, which is nicer for pastries. But you retain the germ and all the nutrients and the oils, so it goes stale. It spoils very quickly. So you have to mill it fresh, and it's like wild. It's totally wild. Like if you take regular flour and stick it in water and put it in a jar, nothing's gonna happen for a while. If you take this flour and put it in water and stick it in a jar, nothing else. It'll just start exploding for a few hours. Like it'll go crazy.
When you said 30 hours, I was like, oh, that's not,
Yeah.
I've heard of friends setting out a bowl of water and, they watch Cooked on
Right.
Netflix and they're like, I'm going to make my own bread. And
Right.
6 days later, nothing happens.
Right.
30 hours is fast.
Oh, it's fast. It's nuts. It's crazy. I remember the first time I was like, whoa, what is happening? It's so but that's what
you want.
That's what you want in your body. Like we're missing that. So it's healthier for you. It like helps it digest, like all those bacteria and yeast and everything is actually like pre-digesting what your body's gonna have to do later if you don't get if you just have like straight yeasted white bread. So
Is there any
Yeah.
difficulty in finding the wheat that you want to use?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's been a big challenge, and there's not a lot of grace in it. Like you get a harvest a year, and if it fails or is not of good quality, you have to wait till the next year. So we have a lot of like very courageous farmers who are planting stuff for us. We're like, can you try this for us? We really it's not planted in Kansas. We can't get it locally, which has been a cool process. It's been difficult for both them and for us, but I think it's becoming easier, and we hope to like prove it out so that restaurants who want to make pasta can use flour that's grown like wheat flour that's grown like 30 minutes away. That's the end goal.
So you maybe are going to offshoot into a flour business at some point?
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
Yeah, because our mill's maxed out, so we can't even get the volume to distribute to ourselves completely. So we still have to supplement, especially at Lenexa. And for Very, just converted over to using all fresh milled flour.
Wow.
We're milling some stuff for Thomastown. We're milling some rye for them, which is cool. So their rye whiskey will be made out of flour that we've milled.
Oh,
Wow.
that's an awesome collaboration.
Yeah. They use a lot of flour.
Wow. So when you approach farmers, though, and you ask them to grow a crop for you, what kind of, like financial commitment are you making here? Because if they come up with nothing, who's out?
Yeah, we both are. So we have one guy, his name is Greg. He has a place called 180 Farms. We got all of our eggs from him before we opened our new space. And we went to do a farm tour, and he had all these bags of grain just sitting around, and we're like, what are these? He's like, oh yeah, I grow wheat. And yeah, he had like 80 acres that he was converting to organic, and his dad has another like 300 something. His son, he's really passionate about trying to grow good quality wheat, and was essentially just like doing it for himself, and we just wanted to tack onto it. So we've like slowly kind of expanded. One of our crops completely failed last year, so he has a backup plan. He's got hogs and cows that he feeds maybe just pigs that he does as well. So he uses that for them. But yeah, the commitment to purchasing is like a difficult thing. So we used a good portion of it to try to like make stuff out of, which is challenging.
Yeah. And then also with the weather lately.
That was the problem.
So much
Yeah.
flooding. Okay. So that's affecting.
Huge, yeah. If it gets too wet at the wrong time, the wheat actually sprouts, and that's what we dealt with last year. So you're dealing with like a vegetable instead of a starch at that point.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And what about the flooding that we're dealing with now? Have they been able to plant, or have you run into any issue for the future crop?
So far, it's been okay,
Yeah.
based on their location. But yeah, it could be really bad. Yeah, we'll see. We'll find out in July.
Right? Up and down the riverbed, truly.
Yeah. I've been driving by. I went up north, and I mean, just there's a lot of flooding going on.
Oh, it's crazy.
And so that's going to be an issue, I think, down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find a farmer that you can work with, then do you change your breads to reflect
Yeah.
the change in flavor, I guess?
Yeah.
Of the profile that you're getting is different every time, right?
Yeah. That's a really interesting process and fun, but also not fun at times. So the what people don't maybe realize about our products is we change them constantly to try to get the same end result because there's so many variables that you have to control. If it's humid one day, if it's going to be 90 degrees versus 70 degrees. Kansas is like the worst for baking bread because of the fluctuations. So it's a constant adaptation to how the grain comes out of the mill. Like even 1% extra humidity in storage impacts it dramatically. So all of that is being dealt with all the time. So we are changing our recipes daily, actually, to try to achieve the same end result. Yeah.
So you need really smart bakers who
Really
can work
Yeah.
on the fly and be kind of self-directed, it sounds like.
Yeah. They do amazing jobs at figuring it out, and it's like a skill set. Like that's what I love about baking most. I think is just that it is a chemical process, but it's also like very intuitive, and you can gain that intuition the more you work with the product. So to get to the point where you're actually like able to have a moment where like, whoa, I feel what I need to do instead of following a recipe and being told what I need to do. That's where we try to get staff, and that's what I love about it. Like the more you do it, the better you become at it, essentially.
And it's really meditative.
Yeah, because of that, you're like you get the recipe down, and then it's all like, is it ready or not? Do I need to let it wait, or is it time to like shape it? Yeah, and that rhythm is really nice because you enter into it like freshly every day. You're not taking something from the day before and utilizing. You're starting new. So you have to like be conscious of all of those variables. And if you get distracted, it's like if I have bad days, the bread turns out bad. It just does. If I am like feeling frustrated, it just doesn't come out well because I'm not paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Well, let's talk about the economics of bread too, though. So you look at bread can be $8 a loaf or more, and some people go, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Have we changed as consumers out there? Have we decided that we want to pay more for our bread?
I don't think on a mass scale we have. I think that's an ongoing challenge that we face for really all of our products is like it's a difficult balance between the real price, like what it should be priced at, and what the market price of the product is. So the association that when someone can go to a grocery store and buy prepackaged bread outside of farm to market bread, when that becomes interchangeable with bread that's made by hand over multiple hours, it's very labor intensive. It's a very difficult thing to balance. So we have to illustrate and educate, which is what my wife is amazing at. That like educate people why it's better for you, why it's different, why it's more expensive. But I think there's a lot of people that don't know that or are unwilling to commit to that, and that's fine. It's a process. And that's one of the reasons why we're actually interested in the supply chain as a whole, because part of the issue is just commodity wheat pricing and commodity wheat structures in general. Like actually the farms that are being most impacted by the flooding are big commodity farms because they have no erosion protection. It's just everything's running off. It's the reason why the flood is so bad. Not solely, but it's a big contributor. So the whole supply chain is actually flipped upside down. If we could have more localized grain, could have more localized wheat, could have better care for like the soil and the agricultural processes, we could actually drop our pricing because there'd be more demand for those weird, which are now weird grains, but they were normal 100 years ago. So we're really interested in engaging that more because collectively, if you could meet in the middle in a way where, but that's a long process.
Talk about what makes them weird, as you say. What makes the weird wheat that you're looking for?
Yeah, the wheat's weird because they're all different heights. So wheat has been bred over the course of the past 100 years to grow at a specific height, so it can be harvested by big tractors. If it gets too tall, they can't harvest them, or if it gets too low, they can't harvest them. Also, to produce really large, starchy berries, which are what the kernels of the grain, which are actually the things that you mill into flour. And the weird wheat is all different. It's just like more wild. They're closer. They're more closely connected with grass. And so the flavor is totally different. The yield is totally different. Like if you plant them all next to each other, they're all going to look different from one another. They have different colors. Yeah. So what we know, they look weird comparatively. If you put them next to like regular commodity wheat, they almost don't look like the same thing. Yeah.
How do you handle gluten-free, carb-conscious people? I mean, does this seem to impact your business, or does everyone out there say they're not eating carbs, but they really are?
We've had less of a carb thing. I don't really talk to. I'm more behind the scenes, so I don't know as much as probably our staff would about this. But I know that we have the benefit of gluten being pre-digested by like the yeast culture, the sourdough starter that we use, and the quality of the grain that we get. So we're able to sell bread, and people are able to eat it that have gluten sensitivities. If you're celiac, that's like a literal allergic reaction, and we there's nothing we can do about that. But we have a huge range of customers that don't get impacted by our products, that do get impacted by other products that may look the same, but they're treated differently in the process. So that's been really cool to be in the midst of all like a lot of the gluten allergy thing and a lot of people getting diagnosed with that, and then us being able to like, well, you can try it. And we have hundreds of people who are able to like eat our bread who haven't had bread for multiple years. Like, you can eat it. Yeah.
It's interesting. Apart from celiac and apart from an actual gluten allergy, it's like fermented bread has become its own category.
Yes.
Naturally fermented, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, lactose intolerant versus yogurt. Like some people are able to, like, if it's a true traditional yogurt, people can maybe eat it, or cheese. That's like, it's similar to that, but it's even maybe more extreme. Because what we're used to eating is like that really poor quality wheat with yeast that's risen over a very short period of time. So it'd basically be like taking raw flour, putting water in it, and eating that. Like that is what your body's trying to do, and that's like sticky. And if you actually try that, you can understand why it'd be hard for your body to.
And I think that you have. I'm getting.
I definitely have.
Part of the process, right?
That was one of the first things I learned from Fred. He told me to take a ball of dough and put it under water and keep rubbing it in my hands, and I'll actually see the gluten in the end. Like everything will be stripped away, and you'll see this like gluten web.
I didn't know
And
you
then
could actually see it. I thought it was one of those chemical things you would never really, at the microbial.
Yeah, but
biological
it
level.
chains up, so you can actually like visually. It's not. It is, but you can see it. It's crazy. It's a fun experiment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, do you have like a whole marketing campaign to, how do you get these messages out that you're doing a lot of cool stuff?
Yeah, I don't think we do a good, to be honest, I don't think we could do a good job at that. I really am poor at that. I just have it all in my head. It's like, well, this makes sense. Um, and I think people are able to taste it and be like, there's something different about it. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about how we could just do a better job at people understanding what we do and why, yeah, why it's important to us at least.
That would be important if you were going to expand in a big way.
Yeah.
Hint, is there any expansion on the horizon here?
We're talking about it. Yeah, as I said, I'm really interested in doing maybe a larger scale milling project. We have some people who are interested in being a part of that. There's a really cool group right now, just independent bakers from places that are meeting up once a month to talk about it, to just try to make the grain economy better.
So, like itinerant bakers in this area?
Yeah,
Or,
like people from Wheatfield, from 1900, from our place. Yeah, and that's been really cool. It's so we'll see. I don't know. We just did cold brew for coffee, so we're canning our cold brew, and
Ooh.
that's going. I don't know. We thought that maybe this year would just like not expand. So we'll see what
this year
happens.
because every year you seem to. Okay, so one thing that sort of bugged me is that there's no Ibis on the Messenger building. Why is that?
We actually did put it on the side. It wasn't
Oh,
originally there.
okay.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that, Lindsay?
Mhm, the front says, like you said earlier, messenger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We thought that it was important to have a space for people to engage with Messenger Coffee as a company. Because at that point, they were just in a warehouse. No one could come into the space unless you're an account. Well, it was open to people if they wanted to come by, but it was like
Right.
in an office complex. And yeah, so we wanted, we wanted people to be able to understand what they were about. So that's why, and we felt like people understood that about Ibis. Like we had our farmers market stands; they were familiar enough with our retail experience. And Messenger hadn't had an opportunity to have that.
And the Ibis, talk about the origin of that name and bird.
Yeah, my brother found and came up with the word. My brother Matt, he was just looking up. We wanted something that was like relatively simple, so he was looking up different things. And the ibis bird, actually eats only in community, so it won't eat by itself. We thought that was a cool analogy / metaphor for what we wanted out of our spaces and for our products. Yeah.
I had forgotten about that, and you had told me that story. I looked up an
Yeah.
old story, and I'm like, oh, that's why. Because after a while, you just sort of, at first you go, well, why would you name your bread company after a bird?
Right.
But then after a while, it's just common knowledge that
Right.
Ibis is Ibis, and that's what it's been, right? All those years now of. But what's it like working with family?
It has its challenges. Yeah.
Let's talk about those.
If I want to.
Well, in vague terms, but bread, coffee, you got a lot going on. You've got 3 generations, right?
Yeah, two.
Or do you have
two.
more? Do you have
Two.
okay,
Yeah.
2? Well, wait, are your parents still in?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, 2.
Yeah.
I got it. Laterally.
Yeah. So I think what's positive about it is I think we've gotten to the point where we are now because of our ability to just like talk about things and not have, but it's also at this point, yeah, it's been tough. It's been fun as well. We've had some of our family members who are like exiting out of the businesses to kind of do their own thing. Because in the process, like when you have competing value sets, it's hard to like make decisions and on good terms, but like just wanting to function independently and Yeah, there's.
So is it like
there's a
three
loaded
separate
question.
businesses that kind of?
Yeah, and so part of the reason for some of the exits is we've been trying to make it more unified. So we not change branding or anything like that, but make sure that we are being conscious of staff. Like, so if they come in and they work at one space and then work in another space, they're able to like understand that a lot of the systems and stuff, and it's been just disconnected because of the way we've grown, and how kind of rapidly we have grown. So we're consolidating it, and in that process, we're having to talk about like, why are we doing what we're doing, really? And we realize that people have different perspectives and opinions, and that's totally fine. So it's been a conversation around why, really.
Well, you're creating culture right now, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think we've
Comes with
had
the growth.
disconnected culture in the past just because of the growth. So it's a cool time, but it's been a little difficult. Yeah,
Yeah, I see the wheels grinding there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of growth in a really short time. I bet you're suddenly confronted with like HR issues
and
and
trying to hire
hiring and
HR
firing and
Employee handbooks,
yeah.
all that stuff, right?
all those things you never really thought about
I
as
know.
the baker, right?
it's like I don't need a handbook.
But maybe you do.
We do need a handbook,
Right? Can we talk about the coffee? Because
Sure. Yeah.
Messenger is delicious coffee, the kind of coffee that requires tasting notes, which I think is a great thing. And Kansas City's coffee scene really in the last, I mean, what do you think? What do you think? 10 years?
Yeah.
15? The roastery has been around for a long
while.
time now. But since then, all of these other really making a name for themselves coffees, Oddly Correct, Thou Mayest, Messenger to be sure.
Yeah.
What has brought on that change, do you think? And how has the taste changed of people drinking coffee in Kansas City?
Yeah, I think it's some combination between having so we have a couple of really amazing resources in Kansas City for coffee. Marty and Trudy Bro, they do service calls, so they do espresso installations and repairs. And most cities don't have them. They get flown out to other cities to do what they do.
Really?
So to have that in Kansas City is like if I want to open a coffee shop, we have a low barrier to entry because of that, and also pricing. You know, it's relatively cheap to get a space in Kansas City. It's relatively easy to set up a roaster and roast coffee, and the community is one that like a lot of people have come out of the roastery or kind of out of Starbucks. So that already. There's a baseline I think that we've been able to move off of. Yeah, and I think there's I don't know what it looks like 5 years from now. I think it's hard to know how much how much it'll continue to grow. But it's a really cool time to be in that industry in Kansas City, and customers appreciate it. Like we have amazing customers who are like super supportive and loyal to brand. So loyalty to them,
Yes.
loyalty to Messenger, loyalty to their space, and that's awesome. Yeah, so Kansas City coffee is great. It's a great time to be a part of it.
It kind of reminds me of the brewery scene,
Yeah.
you
We
know?
just got a lot going on
Yes.
in the city, and it's fascinating. And I think part of that, again, Lindsay, we've talked about this before with other people and between ourselves, collaboration, just people really working
Yeah.
with each other, sharing, getting together for meetings, coming over, come over to my place. And you see chefs in each other's places. You see brewers hanging out with other brewers. You see
Yeah.
bakers, I guess, hanging out with other bakers.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that. You all cheer each other on.
Yeah. I think it literally is that way.
And that maybe is not like that in other cities. I don't know if that's Kansas City rare, or what do you think?
I don't know, actually. I'm not connected much outside of the city because, so I'm not really sure. But it's hard to imagine it being that connected. I think it's also hard to imagine it. Like, if you take the San Francisco, for example, it's a lot more expensive to open a space. So it's a lot. I mean, to get the investment, to get the experience, like you've got to have it on, and you have to make it, and you need to do a lot to make it. So there can be a level of competition in that process. I think that we don't necessarily have to participate in, and it happens. But yeah, I think I had an interesting conversation with a guy. Actually, we did a collaboration beer with a new brewery, and I was sitting with him, and he was talking about Kansas City. He travels all over the place, and he was saying he loves being here right now because it feels like there's this rare combination of the right economy, the right amount of demand from customers, and yeah, that, and just like the right quantity of knowledge to start things, and there's just so much energy going into new things and newness, and I think it's really special. He's like, it's not gonna be there forever. It's a cool time.
We're in a moment.
Yeah, that's exactly how we put it. We are. Yeah.
We always get up on a Saturday morning and we always want to go somewhere, and the conversation always ends with, "I'd love to go there, but they don't have great coffee," or "I'd love to go there, but they don't have like the kind of food that we're looking for." The combo is pretty rare to be that good at baking and that good at coffee at the same time. I mean, how did you guys do that?
We have really good people.
Right?
I can't take credit for the coffee at all. We've got amazing people who source coffee well, who roast coffee well, who make coffee well. Yeah. So I just try to get out of the way.
Do you think about the coffee when you're baking, like people would a beer or wine pairing at all? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
yeah.
do.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like when you're thinking about this kind of coffee would taste good with what? I don't know.
Yeah, we really want to have a little tasting menu on where we are able to like do pairings, because the pastry staff thinks a lot about it. Like, what coffee would this go well with, and make a suggestion for it. So that's something we're thinking about more. But coffee and baked things go just generally well together. I mean, bakers
Absolutely.
drink a lot of coffee.
Right?
They have to. They get up so darn early.
That's right.
It's outrageous.
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask, do I think about coffee? Honestly, I do. I definitely do.
Dream about it.
I have some right next to me.
Do you think a lot more people are more? I for the first time in my life walked into one of our favorite coffee shops and go, "Can I have this blend this time?" Like I'm all of a sudden conscious of that's really fruity and acidic, and maybe today I don't want that. I want the more nutty kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know I'm not alone, or
No,
at all the
you're
first
not.
person to finally start to think that way, consumer wise.
Yeah.
Has that happened when people walk into
Oh,
your
yeah.
store?
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah. And again, like the staff does a really good job at like expressing the options. Like this one's gonna be more nutty and chocolatey, or kind of like heavy, or this one's gonna be more acidic and bright. And yeah, how do you feel about like which one do you want? We always have options. I think it's so we never just have one. So people always get to choose, and they get to be told like here are the choices. And we also do a little slow bar experience. So on our second story of Messenger Space, on the weekends, we have a barista from downstairs and one of our people from Messenger Wholesale Company partner up and do a flight. So it's like $6, and you get basically 3 different coffees, or all the same coffee brewed in 3 different ways, and people can engage that and do engage that a lot, and that's a really cool like. If you get 3 different Ethiopian coffee or 3 different African coffees, Kenya, Ethiopia, something else, you can really taste the difference. So that's an educational tool too for people like, I had this and I see it on the menu now, and that's what I feel like drinking today.
Takes a while.
Kinda like wine. Yeah.
Completely. I remember my brother who adores coffee and made his own, I'm going to say it wrong, Kyoto, the dripping. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yes. When he said, this one has a bell pepper note. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But then I could taste it. It's
Yeah,
the same.
bell pepper.
It is like tasting wine.
It's kind of like bubble gum with the crane beer we were
Right.
talking
Oh,
about. I'm
yeah.
like, that's a word that
Yeah.
doesn't get associated with wine very much, but
Yeah.
it does help expand your sense of what you're tasting.
And the thought that goes into it.
Yeah.
And the energy that goes to it on the farm level is it makes it so distinct. It can there can be 2 farms side by side and they can be very different. it's incredible actually. So much of it, like Messenger's philosophy and the way they source and roast is that they're just like pulling out flavors. It's not. It's already there. It's just their job to pull it out, figure out the right profile to maximize what it has to offer. So they already exist in the
It's
coffee.
terroir, right? That sense of place that everything is different. And
And coffee's fermented. It's a fermented food like wine. Yeah, and that fermentation has an impact as well, significant impact.
so if you hadn't stumbled into the whole coffee and bread thing, what would you be doing? Would you still be skateboarding somewhere?
Probably. I'm going surfing next weekend.
Fabulous.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
In a nearby lake?
Not so much.
No. Yeah, in San Diego.
San
Just
Diego.
for a couple days. I think I would be being outside doing something.
Yeah.
Maybe making wine. I'm interested
Oh.
in that. Probably skateboarding or maybe surfing.
And fermentation of some kind.
Yes,
right?
definitely fermentation. Yeah, gotta have that.
When you're traveling, do you stop in other bakeries, other coffee shops?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I try to connect with them ahead of time, especially bakers. So like just to see their process, and again, the community is so collaborative. That's like, I've baked with a lot of different places. I baked with 2 guys in Italy overnight when I was on vacation a few years ago,
Wow.
and we didn't speak the same language, so it was an incredible experience where these guys are just doing their thing, and we're looking at each other and showing pictures of what we do and comparing it, and drinking coffee.
How fun.
So fun. Yeah, it's so fun. Yeah, so traveling, I love trying different places and getting exposed to what other people are doing.
And bringing it back here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you bake bread when you were a kid?
My grandma baked bread, and I used to help her. I didn't ever like bake it myself, I don't think. But when she passed away, I got her bread bowl that she made all of her bread from. So I
Aw.
still use that.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like it was meant to be.
Chris, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on.
Thanks for having me.
I'll see you at Cheese Slipper Saturday, man.
Yeah.
Or Friday. Cheese
Fridays.
Slipper Friday.
Not if I elbow you out first. Watch out, girl. Thanks for coming in.